Hello.
Hey Andre, what's up?
Hey. So I can hear that you're outside. You're gonna be outside for this episode. You're recording outside.
Yeah, I am recording outside. However, I made sure that all of my materials are not on my computer, so you will not hear me clicking this time.
Yeah. But if for listeners, or for five listeners now, if any of you can hear the ambience of the cars in the background, that's why. But honestly, I think it makes it more real and more raw. So it's good.
Yeah, this is real
Um,
audio. This is stuff that we recorded, we mixtaped.
that's how you know that we're like a podcast from the earth. Like we're real grassroots.
I am
Like
underneath the stars right now,
um.
and I'm kind of cold.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Tonight is the night we should have talked about aliens, but it is not what we're talking about
Oh my
tonight.
god.
What are we talking about tonight?
Tonight we are talking about all things psychic, what you'd call parapsychology. I'm pretty excited because in this case I am not the skeptical one. I mean, I am a little bit, but I mean, with all things, this is something I actually would like to believe in, which I think is the difference here. First off, real quick, what are we again? Are we Scary Talk?
We are Scary Talk. We've been Scary Talk for 3 episodes. We are sticking to it just because, I mean, we don't want to confuse the listeners. The 5 people that are listening, we don't want to confuse them. Before we start on the topic, though, I do want to remind everyone, all jokes aside, that we are on Twitter as @TalkScary. And you can also find us on all your favorite podcast listening platforms like Apple Podcasts, Google Play, TuneIn, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. We are all
Awesome.
there as Talk Scary Podcast. So go ahead and give us a listen. I mean, if you're here, you're already giving us a listen, but like tell your friends, you know what I mean. Shannon, okay, so this is what I thought for the dynamic of this show. So I did a little bit of research, but what I found is that it's hard to do research on something which is already the mainstream view, because if you say like, oh, I believe in the third eye and here's my proof, like my proof, like really like is gonna be, well, I don't, because people say that it's not that, and obviously mainstream science tells you it's not mystical, yada yada yada. So it's hard for me. So what I thought we should do is more of a true back and forth. It's just you present your ideas, because I'm playing the skeptical. I'm playing the skeptic on this episode, and then once you present them, I rebut them as soon as something comes up in my head. So it's more like it's a little bit of like fighting a little bit. It's a lot more, I want to say that it's a lot more argumentative, a lot more debate like, I guess.
All right. I mean, as long as we're just sticking to like we're just having a conversation, because like obviously I can't prove this, that's a reality, when we're talking about stuff that cannot be explained and has not been explained yet. I don't have proof, but I would love to hear what you think about it, because that's what this is all about. Like, let's just see what we think. Let's see what we land on.
Okay. I should add that even though I'm playing the skeptic, I still would like to be convinced.
Okay.
So I'm not gonna be. Yeah, that's why I shouldn't have used the word fighting. I'm not gonna be hostile towards what you present, because I am looking to be convinced if I feel whatever you present me is compelling enough. It's just that I very much stand on like the opposite side of where you stand, so it's gonna be an uphill battle. But I really am open.
Okay, so I want to start off with asking you, because you are our representation of the skeptic here. What is it about psychicness or stuff like that, or ESP, that you don't want to believe in, or I guess you find it harder to believe in than other things?
Wait, define ESP again?
ESP, extrasensory perception. So, like our 6th, 7th, 8th senses that we cannot define yet.
Okay, the deal for me is I think that humans have intuition, and I think that you can really play that up in your head if you let yourself go. But I don't think it goes beyond that. Like, and intuition is a thing. It's like scientifically proven. It's that feeling in your gut. But I never take it outside the realm of the earthly, I guess you could say. For me, it's just that, like sixth sense, intuition, like the third eye, they're all the same thing. And really what they are is just your body responding to some stimuli, often either danger or, well, yeah, it's usually danger, like fear. That's really usually what it is. I don't know. I guess I just don't see anything beyond that.
Okay. I mean, that sounds about reasonable, I guess. It's funny you bring up intuition, because I think that is greatly rooted in what I want to talk about first. So, cue the lights. We're going to pretend like I'm Steve Jobs right now. Do you ever feel?
Are you wearing are you wearing a black turtleneck?
I'm actually wearing a Disneyland sweater. No advertisement, but it's cold. All right, are you
Okay.
ready?
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like you're being watched? And it turns out
Are you
that
are
you
you
are? Okay, but
um
seriously, like there are moments where you're standing in a room full of people and you can just feel someone watching you and they're behind you. That this is
no.
totally a
See,
thing.
I know because I have felt that, but I don't think that's what it is. I think that when we're young, we experience that happening. Like when we okay, so the first time this ever happens to you, let's say you're 5 years old, you're sitting in a classroom and you look behind you just cause, and you see that a classmate is looking at you, as people often will, because people have to look at something, and so just out of pure chance, it ends up being your back that they're looking to, and by process of you become accustomed to it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And 10 years later, when this keeps happening in your life, as it happens to everyone all the time, you I guess you can convince yourself that someone's looking at you, and therefore you must have some kind of like psychic power. But in reality, it's just that I'm blanking on the word.
That you're so used to it happening, you're conditioned for it to
Exactly.
happen.
Yeah, exactly. Conditioning is
Hmm.
what I was gonna say. You're conditioned to that happening to you, looking behind you and someone looking at you, which is probably a very common thing to happen. Um, but you explain it to yourself as, "Oh no, I predicted that before I looked." When in reality, one, you didn't. Two, the reason when you looked back there was someone looking is just because the chance of that happening is very high,
Okay,
because people just have to look at something.
okay, I am going to counter that and say, well, what about when you're asleep and you wake up because someone is watching you sleep? How did you know that if you were asleep?
One, I don't know what kind of Twilight fucking world you live in, but that's
It
never
has
happened to
happened to
me.
me. My
Uh,
mom likes to tower over me while I'm sleeping. It is creepy. And I know.
Beautiful.
I'm just saying, I think
Um,
that this is one that's a little bit easier to dismiss because it does happen very frequently, like you're saying. Like, yeah, like
no,
people do watch. But what if, I don't know, I feel like it's really common. Like, you can just feel it, you know?
but didn't you just wake up though? Like, if someone's looking at you while you're sleeping,
Oh,
and
no, not the sleeping one.
okay,
Just like in general.
no, but I was gonna say about the sleeping one, like maybe you just open your eyes and that's it. Like maybe if it was a normal,
Well, what if. I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, why wouldn't you just keep sleeping then?
because
Like,
sometimes
you
you
woke up
don't.
because they were watching you. No, okay.
Because sometimes people just wake up in the middle of the night. That's a thing. The 2
I guess
a.m.
that's
pee
true.
run.
Okay, well, I'm
Okay.
gonna finish my intro here. Alright, so what about in those situations when, and this is like a totally different topic, but what about when you're about to text someone and then they text you and it's like, oh, we're so connected. Like, I was literally just about to text you.
That is that is not it, sis. Like
Andre, I am coming for every girl who sits in Starbucks right now. You know who you are. You have felt this. You are psychic.
that's just a coincidence. That's just a coincidence.
Okay, but how many coincidences have to occur before you can say this is a pattern and this is real? I'm just saying, maybe there's a minute. Okay, anyway, we're getting into the minute situation.
Okay. Okay.
So it doesn't all have to be beyond this world. Like, obviously, like you're saying, like, some things just aren't. But just for the sake of this podcast, what if? What if there is just a tiny, what if there's something that helps us understand or be connected to one another? And it's not necessarily that there are individuals that are psychic. I'm saying, what if everyone is psychic? Because everyone has this. Or, in the very least, everyone is connected.
Are you talking about the collective unconscious?
That is something I want to talk about, and it's the collective unconsciousness, but maybe a little bit later.
Okay.
So, the things I want to talk about today are clairvoyance, which is perceiving things in the future, telepathy,
Mm-hmm.
which is communication of thoughts or ideas used beyond the known senses. So, those things are often confused, but they are kind of different. Clairvoyance, future, telepathy, kind of happening right now, and it's communication between people, objects, dreams. I don't know what you're into. And then I want to talk about the pineal gland,
Yeah.
the third eye, and then source field / collective unconsciousness.
Okay, well, let's get on this.
Yeah, so the two books that I was referencing throughout this entire research mode is Science Looks at ESP by Henry W. Pierce, and The Probability of the Impossible, Scientific Discoveries and Explorations of the Psychic World by Dr. Thelma Moss. And these books I got used for like $2 at Cal's bookstore, which I don't know if you've ever been there, but it is amazing.
I don't read.
Oh my god. Cal runs his bookstore in this storage unit, in a storage unit center. And when you go inside, it's just like floor to ceiling packed. And then you go through the different storage units, and there's ladders, and there's like this whole section on psychicness and aliens and conspiracies, and it's amazing. And so
That does sound pretty cool.
and so this is a little bit difficult to find online. I'm sure the specific examples are going to be easy to look up. But in general, like, these are some freaking treasures from beyond this world. Like, these people did their research. So,
Okay.
yeah, let's get to it. So the pineal gland. So the third eye, this is something that I would think would probably key into a lot of things we're going to talk about, especially, like, how do we know when someone's watching us, Andre? Stuff like that. Go ahead.
No, just go ahead.
Okay. And just so you know, I don't fully believe in all this, just to reiterate. I just think it's really interesting. So, pineal gland is a small endocrine gland located in the brain. It regulates melatonin. It affects the waking and sleep patterns in the brain. That is the scientific explanation for what the pineal gland does. However, it is the size of pea, shaped like a pine cone, and throughout history, and in many statues and paintings, you will find the pine cone image literally everywhere. Like, it's everywhere. Like, why are people so obsessed with the pine cone? I have a theory. They're not. They're obsessed with the pineal gland.
Okay.
Anyway, there's the conspiracy part out of the way. So, in mystical tradition, the pineal gland is believed to be the connecting link between the physical and the spiritual worlds. In ancient Egypt, the Eye of Horus mirrors the exact image of the pineal gland in the brain, and it's often depicted between the eyes on the forehead in many sarcophagi, paintings.
Or maybe it's just an eye. Like, do you think the Egyptians had the anatomical knowledge to be like, yep, the pineal gland does
They
this?
totally did. They were some of the most medically advanced, of their time. Like, they did surgeries and stuff. Like, they were intense.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, they did. Okay, so development of the psychic talents has been closely associated with the pineal gland. Basically, your third eye can open. It can be opened. And here's the big conspiracy theory. Fluoride is thought to calcify the pineal gland. And there's fluoride in our drinking water. Therefore, the government does not want you to be woke.
I do know that the pineal gland can become calcified, and that by old age it has as much fluoride as your teeth do. Sorry, but I don't think that it's the government trying to keep us from astral projection and connecting with the universe.
They don't want us to see the truth.
I think I read something about this once. I don't know if there was an amazing reason, but I do know that it has something to do with dental hygiene.
Oh yeah, no, they need fluoride in the water, else our teeth will rot. But our third eye needs to be open.
So rot your teeth, but open your third eye. I mean, it's an exchange. I don't know how great of an exchange it is.
Hey, people have been living without dentists for thousands of years. Were they disgusting?
Yeah, they've also died at 30 for thousands of years. Probably because they lose all their teeth and their gums are just open sores and they get some kind of infection and die at 35.
That's a good point, but maybe they saw that coming. They were psychic.
Yeah, with their pineal gland.
Oh man. Okay, so most animals have much larger pineal glands that guide their instinctual practices. And animals, they know better than us. They can sense when an earthquake is coming. I'm just saying, maybe we need to be more like them and just rely more on instinct and intuition. Maybe that would help us out.
I mean, I do know that dogs can tell when earthquake is coming, but I think that has something to do either with their noses somehow, or more likely with their ears, because dogs have both super sensitive ears and noses. They probably hear some kind of I don't know, like rumbling down below before we even feel it.
That's fair.
Um, but I am killing your vibe, so go ahead.
Okay. So then the last little, and this is kind of all like the pineal gland and what I'm about to talk about next. This is the how, I guess, in terms of, well, if there is something going on psychically or in a different realm, then maybe it's because of the pineal gland. Maybe we haven't accessed it yet. Maybe if we trained it better, we could. And then the other thing is the collective unconsciousness. So the collective unconsciousness is basically a really long, not necessarily theory, but it's an idea that all human beings are kind of on the same wavelength in terms of their thoughts. And this is why we have archetypes that appear so frequently, like the hero, the villain, stuff like that. And it goes pretty deeper than that. I'm not actually a big fan of the collective unconsciousness because I'm a firm believer in like sociology and psychology being the reason we all think the same things and why every single person likes to pitch the same movie over and over again. Like, I don't think that's that deep.
Right. Yeah, have you ever heard that like people, like humans, really only like four stories? Really, it's like either the I honestly don't remember what like the archetypes are, but basically every like famous movie, book, any kind of story ever is basically one of like four elemental
Yeah.
storylines, and that's all we like to hear. It's either like the odyssey of a hero, or an underdog story, or like love conquers all story. I don't
Hmm.
know. It's like very basic, and you just change the characters and the setting, but in the like at its core it's all the
Yeah, and I think
same
that can be easily
stories.
explained by the fact that that's just what we've grown up listening to, and that's what the people before us grew up listening to. And I think a lot of the collective unconsciousness stuff is just process of like evolution and stuff. Like we all feel the same instinctual terror from a spider because frick, no one likes spiders. Like they're disgusting. Like that's just the reality.
Right.
Like
Yeah. Well, more than that, more than the fact that we've just grown up with it, because there's things that we grew up with and we shed. There's traditions that generations shed. I think it's because we like it. It's a form of wish fulfillment to hear these stories being told to
mhm.
us. And so when we grow up, then we tell them to the younger generation. If they were really bad, like we would have just stopped telling them generations ago. But everyone likes them because there must be some kind of real, I don't know, primitive need to fulfill that wish of like, yeah, that's how life is. Life is fair, and love does conquer all things. You know what I mean? Like you want to
Yeah.
convince yourself of those things, because otherwise you have to accept that an almost like nihilistic point of view, and who wants that?
I mean
Beyond nihilist.
I'm a nihilist, so I don't know.
No, 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 no. I don't. I mean, I could be totally wrong, but knowing you, I don't think you're a nihilist. At the very least, not what I think a nihilist looks like. I do know that you're very much a pragmatic person, especially in your view of the world and how people work. But I'm thinking of a much,
A much darker take on it.
yeah, I
Yeah.
was gonna say that. Yeah, a much darker, almost like meaningless approach to existence. I don't think that meaning is imbued in you just for like just by the virtue of being human and being born. I think that's far too like ethereal. But I think that you can imbue your life with meaning yourself, and that is pragmatic. That is, like that doesn't have to be magical at all. And I think you must believe that, so I don't think you're a real like nihilist.
Okay, this just got very beautiful and inspiring. Um,
Just
okay,
go ahead.
so the one I like to subscribe to above the collective unconsciousness is something called the source field, and this is not very well known, surprisingly. The source field is what I wish the collective unconsciousness meant. So this is a really fringe idea. It was in a book. Okay, so the Source Field Investigations by David Wilcock is the book that basically inspired this. And so the source field is by definition all around us. If you've ever seen Star Wars, it's like the Force. um, Essentially, it is immaterial and it can connect you to almost everything, people. Like, we're all connected in this strange way. It is not the individual who has the power, but the power that
Okay.
is around us. And so that's And I don't know, the reason I bring up the source field is because like me and my sister are really connected, which I don't think is actually the source field. I think it's just because we're very similar people. And so like we literally like mailed each other coloring pages like without telling each other, and they arrived on the exact same days, and we texted each other and we're like, oh my god, what the heck, and like stuff like that. That's really random and weird. Or like how my mom knows exactly what I'm craving, even though we like literally never talk. She'll just be like, here's Taco Bell, or here's like this weird 90s candy that for some reason I thought of too. And I'm like, what?
Well, she is your mom. Like she knows you in a way no one else does.
I mean, isn't
I
that a little psychic too? Maybe she just knows what I'm hungry
No,
for.
that's just the fact that she's your mom.
I don't know. We literally don't talk. How does she know what I want to eat? Like, I don't say it out loud chanting in my room. Like, I really want French toast. Like, no.
I mean, maybe you just eat anything, and you think that you really want something really specific, but in reality, it could be something really broad. Like, oh, I just want something greasy right now, and then your mom
Oh
mentions
no,
Taco
it's
Bell, and you're like, oh my god, you read my mind.
Andre. It
Force
is so
field.
not. I'm telling you specifically, specifically. However, with that in mind, she has been very off, and she does not understand that I do not like McDonald's, and will just be like, "Here, McDonald's." I'm like, why? Okay, so. The source field can also be explained for other things. This is actually a real life example. I don't know if you've ever heard of plant experiments where people would attach polygraphs to plants to see what would happen. So,
No, but I do know that plants can like feel things,
okay.
and apparently, yeah, like that's awful. So I can't eat plants.
That's what I was going to talk about, and that is actually incorrect. I was going to say that at the end, but it's completely incorrect. It's been debunked by the Mythbusters. But in the 1960s, Cleve Baxter, the founder of the FBI's program for polygraph units, decided to run tests on plants' perception. So he wanted to see if they had emotional responses when they were watered. And so he attached polygraphs, and he found minute activity for positivity when they were watered. There was also a test on eggs. So other researchers heard about this and they wanted to see. So they would take eggs and attach them to polygraphs and then boil eggs in front of them to see if they had a negative response. This did not yield anything, and Mythbusters did debunk all of this.
Wait. Can you repeat the egg thing? So, what?
Oh, okay. So other researchers heard about what Cleve Baxter had done with the plants, right?
Uh-huh.
And so he wanted to see if this would work on eggs.
Like
like
live
chicken
egg?
eggs. No, just like a chicken egg.
That's like, but so it's not fertilized?
I don't know. That's why I didn't really like buy into this one either, because
I
like
hope not.
yeah, because
the
it's
fucker boil the eggs.
right. Well, also like why would an egg that's not even like it's removed from the hen? Why would it have responses? That doesn't make any sense. So
Exactly.
anyway, yeah, they would boil eggs in front of the eggs, like, and there was no response, and they were surprised. But anyway, the Mythbusters actually debunked all of this. It's not a thing. Plants do not have feelings whatsoever. If you want to tell your succulents that they're beautiful every day, though, I do believe in positive energy, you know, just give it to them. You know, they want to grow too. Whatever. That's fine.
I mean, but do they want to grow? How do you want something if you have no sentience? You're contradicting yourself, Shannon. Can I eat plants or not?
Can you eat plants? Is that what you said? You can eat plants, but
Yeah,
okay, plants having feelings means this is not about the topic. We should not get controversial here, Andre. Just eat your salad.
Save all animals, save all plants. Nuts is next. Nuts have feelings. Eat fucking
Just don't eat anything.
just water.
See how long you last.
You know, honestly, breatharianism, like
Breatharianism, is that
topic
where you
idea,
just
question mark?
breathe? What is the life expectancy of
Yeah.
a breatharian?
You know, like SpongeBob in that episode where he just like metamorphoses.
Oh my god. Okay. Alright, so we're going to take a deep dive into the actual research part of this, not just me rambling under the stars, which is actually pretty great.
Mm-hmm.
I have printed out many excerpts from these books, mostly Dr. Thelma Moss's book, The Probability of the Impossible. And I'm going to be talking mostly about clairvoyance, which is predicting the future, and ESP, which is extrasensory perception, perceiving things that you would normally not be able to perceive, such as predicting how many how many beans are in a jar in a room in Arkansas? Something like that, just really random, really specific, which is not an actual example. That was something off the top of my head. Okay.
Is it 53?
It is 53. How did you know?
It's fucking
I
ESP.
know no one in Arkansas. I cannot confirm or deny this. All right, so if you're ready, I would like to read you. This is actually a recorded. Oh, okay. Let me just read to you.
Okay, I'm ready.
So, shortly before his assassination, President Lincoln dreamed of his own death. Fortunately, the details of his dream were recorded by the U.S. Marshal for the District of Columbia, Ward Lamon, who was at a gathering in the White House to celebrate the news of Lee's surrender. Apparently, Lincoln was unusually quiet and withdrawn. So when his wife heard about this, she was like, "Oh, what's up, man?" And so he told her, and he told Lamon, and this is what Lamon recorded in his diary of Abe Lincoln telling him. About 10 days ago, I retired very late. I soon began to dream. There seemed to be a death-like stillness about me. Then I heard subdued sobs, as if a number of people were weeping. I thought I left my bed and wandered downstairs. I went from room to room. No living person was in sight, but the same mournful sounds of distress met me as I passed along. And then I'm just going to skip ahead.
Okay.
I kept on until I arrived in the east room, which I entered. There I met with a sickening surprise. Before me was a catafalque, I don't know that word, on which rested a corpse in funeral vestments. Around it were stationed soldiers who were acting as guards, and there was a throng of people, some gazing mournfully upon the corpse, whose face was covered. Who was dead in the White House? I demanded of one of the soldiers. The president, was his answer. He was killed by an assassin.
Okay, so Lincoln predicted that he was going to be killed by an assassin.
Yes, 10 days or shortly before his assassination. Yeah.
I mean, being a president, like, you're always a target, I think. But I guess, I mean, did it say anything about the theater?
No, it does not.
Okay.
But that's another thing that is often talked about in clairvoyance. It's called primary process distortion. So that's where you can kind of make out what it is, but in the process of transitioning into your own brain or whatever, it's discombobulated. So you wouldn't have exacts. Like if I dreamed about I'm going to Walmart in my blue shirt and I see a dog and the dog is barking. And then the next day I'm going to Walmart and I see a bunch of people in blue shirts because that's what they wear. And then there's a big picture of a dog. Like that's primary distortion because it's similar, but it's not exact.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I don't think it's fair to be like, oh, this thing, a premonition has to be super exact, because I mean, it's already something from the ethereal plane, basically, if it is true. So yeah, I think that's the very high expectation of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not completely close to the idea. Like I said, like if you're president, you probably are always thinking that you're gonna get killed, but he did have a vivid dream about it, which is a little bit different, and it was fairly close to the actual assassination. So
Well, what I find interesting about these things is like, even though you can't prove it, what is good and what they did here is they demonstrated that it actually did occur before he was assassinated. Like someone actually made sure to record it, and that's super important because you can't just say, like I said, like, oh, I had a dream that this happened, then it happened, because you don't know if the person's telling the truth unless you have an actual record that
Right.
shows that they said it before it happened,
It lends credence to the idea of clairvoyance, which is precisely why I am saying all of this. That I'm saying like, oh, you know what? I'm kind of half convinced, because that's, I don't know, that's eerie. Like,
Right. It's and that's what I like so much about this topic, especially, is because it's so weird and it's so, if think about it, like if this is possible, then that just opens up so many doors and what else is possible. And I'm not saying that like, oh, you can predict lottery numbers and win the lottery and stuff like that. I think that if it is real, it's instant. I think that you get what you need to know when you need to know it, and it's not a parlor trick, you know?
yeah.
It's not something you turn off and on. It's just something that happens because maybe, I don't know, the energies in the universe are just so intense right now, or maybe he could have prevented it. I don't know. But I think that's really interesting if it is true. I mean, in the very least, he had the dream. Doesn't mean that it was a precognition, you know?
I mean, it could be that clairvoyance isn't really an ability that the human has, but rather that, like, in the ethereal plane, if it is real, there are such thing as like messengers that might send you a message of the future in a
Hmm.
dream. Like, they give you that gift, and then you have that, like, oh, I had a dream, or like I had a vision. I don't know, I just don't think that, like, the human vibration is at like that level that the human itself would be able to have that kind of ability. But if I believe in things like ghosts and aliens, and obviously I believe in some kind of plane that is beyond what we can see. So I mean, if I believe in clairvoyance, the way I would believe in it, the way it would make sense to me, it would be more like it's something that is
Hmm.
giving us information, not us just having it because we have clairvoyant abilities. Yeah, so I am most open to clairvoyance. Like, from everything that you've mentioned so far, this is it. Maybe you'll say something else, and I like it even more. But so far, because I don't know, the intuition and the pineal gland, I'm really iffy about that, and I just feel like it's all just conditioning from like early, early stages of life. Sorry, but this is a little bit different. If you, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people who are even more skeptical would say, "Oh, well, if you observe things in your surroundings, even if you don't like consciously process them, subconsciously, like the process is taking place. Maybe like Lincoln, 10 days before his assassination, he like saw this guy on the street, and he like I don't know, so." I don't know, like I mean, it's really hard to explain because you really have to like reach. You really have to reach. Exactly, but I think you know what I'm saying. The people, what people counteract what you're saying with, is the idea that you just saw something, and you subconsciously processed it, so you were able to almost predict that this was going to happen because you saw it coming. It was nothing mystical, but I think it's kind of a stretch.
Right. And I also want to indicate, too, that this can't be a case of the hindsight bias because he was dead. So you can't go back and be like, I dreamed about this, guys. I was right. Like you're not convincing yourself that it's true. And also, like, kind of what you're saying about how you can't really fully get into the psychicness if it's a part of us. Like, as human beings, it has to be outside of us, like an external force. I
Hmm.
also think that similarly to ghosts and things, like maybe like everything wasn't explained before, like we're still finding explanations for things. So maybe this is just one of the things science hasn't been able to explain yet, but will be able to eventually. We just haven't found a way to measure it yet.
That thought always intrigues me to like no avail, because it's so it's so interesting because it could be so true. Like,
Hmm.
there, like we only knew of germs like 3 centuries ago. Like, that
Hmm.
was it.
Yeah.
Before that, we thought like farts got us sick, basically. Or like, you have too much blood. Like, so honestly, it's really fair to say that. And I know that a lot of people ridicule that kind of thought process because they really see us right now as being almost at like the pinnacle of scientific knowledge. But
Yeah,
no,
no.
that's just not true. I mean, think of all the things that we don't know about the
Mhm.
cosmos, and I mean actual like outer space. Think galaxies and like celestial bodies, stuff like that. And that's where our focus is right now. Like, the humanity is really focusing on
Yeah.
understanding the stars, basically. But we are any of those resources being put into like understanding what could be a potentially ethereal plane? Like, no, like no one's studying that because we've already settled as a society, well, this is ridiculous and a waste of time. But what if we did put some of those resources into this and somehow found the truth, if there is a truth? Wouldn't that be amazing?
It would be amazing. And also I don't see why we wouldn't be interested in exploring other planes or other dimensions like that, because that could open doors for a lot of different things in science and travel and stuff like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's worthy. And
Well,
also, I don't know.
again, it's the concept of the ridiculous. It's like, oh, this is silly, this is,
Yeah.
you know
Oh,
yeah.
and also, since we're talking about things that aren't explained, there's no explanation for dreams. They have vague ideas of why we dream, but there's not an actual solid, like, this is why. So, if dreams themselves aren't explainable, then why would it be so far fetched that you can dream something that's going to happen?
I mean, I know that there isn't a solid one, but I've always I've always been inclined to believe the theory that says that they're basically your subconscious processing your day, or just processing um a very I'm blanking on the word, but a very important thought that you've been having for a while, like a problem in your life. It's really not that deep.
Oh, Andre, I can tell you about some of my dreams. I don't do anything. I don't leave the house. I don't know why I dream these things. There's no explanation for it.
Um, I mean, but you could still have very salient thoughts that maybe you don't realize you even have, but your subconscious is trying to let you know that they're there and have you not ignore them, and so it shows them to you in dreams.
The other night, I dreamt that I was at a buffet with my family and we were watching Blades of
Maybe
Glory.
you just want that. Maybe that's just a desire of
Maybe
yours.
that is what I want. I mean, I do want a buffet. You're absolutely right. Okay, maybe we should move on to my next
Yes,
example.
yeah.
All right, so we're still on the topic of precognition. So this is actually from Dr. Thelma Moss herself. And I found this one to be really spooky, and considering we are scary talk, I say we give it
Yeah,
a
yeah.
shot.
Let me up the volume on this music. Just kidding. Go ahead.
Okay, so recently a young man telephoned asking to see me. He explained that as a scientist working at a local cancer research institute, he was skeptical of parapsychology, but that he would like my opinion about a very disturbing event. And I want to point out that he is a scientist. Like, this is, and he's already skeptical. Like, I don't know. I think this gives some credence to at least this young man.
Okay.
So he then proceeds to tell Dr. Thelma Moss that about a month before, his sister, who was living with their parents in San Diego, had a vivid dream that terrified her, and terrified her so much she had to tell them about it the next morning. So in the dream, she had seen herself seated in the front seat of a car, being driven along a freeway, when suddenly a small car hurtled over the narrow freeway divider, crashing headlong into the car she was in. She saw the left front wheel of her car fly up into the air and change into a skull's head. And this is when she woke up. And her parents were just like, it's just a dream, it's no big deal, whatever, it's fine. And so he went on saying that his sister had been so distraught by the dream that she had been making a drawing of it. He actually brought the picture to the doctor and he showed it to her. And it showed the left front tire being thrown into the air. The skull was drawn on top of it. And then, yeah, so that's it. She drew it. The young man went on to say that 2 weeks after the dream, and shortly before he telephoned her, the doctor, his sister had been in a car accident on the freeway, in which a Volkswagen, apparently out of control, had hurtled across the narrow freeway barrier into the opposite lane, crashing headlong into the car containing his sister and a few of her friends. His sister had been instantly killed, but all others survived. On impact with the VW, the front left tire had been tossed into the air and had been found a short distance away. So,
Oh my god.
yeah, like
Holy
it's
shit.
it's one thing to predict that
Fucking
you're going to die in a
shook.
car accident, but she predicted the left tire being thrown up into the air, and that is weirdly specific.
That's some Final Destination shit.
Yeah. And she was the only one that was killed.
Okay, again, like I said, I'm a little more open about clairvoyance than I am on any of these things. Probably, honestly, like truthfully, because just because I love the Final Destination movies, and
Oh my
like those movies are contingent upon the protagonist having a premonition at the beginning, and that's always just fascinated me.
Oh, I love this movie
Um,
too. They're great.
I like when I was little, like I was watching these movies way too young. By the way, like I was 10, I shouldn't have been watching these, but I would pretend to have premonitions. Like I would just play, like that would be my game. Like it was fun to me. So that's probably I have a
Yeah.
bias, is what I'm saying. But even if I didn't, that story is hard to explain away. Uh,
Right, because she drew it 2 weeks beforehand. Like, there's evidence, you know? Like,
oh my god!
I don't know. I just find that one really
But
crazy.
okay,
And
who gave her that information? What gave her that information? Why? If she was gonna die anyway.
I don't know. Here's the thing. This is what trips me up about it and why I can't actually believe in it. I don't believe in fate whatsoever. And so if you can dream the future, then that means that the future's already been decided. And I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I don't want to feel like a pawn.
You can dislike it all you want, but there's a lot of truths in life that people dislike, and there's still truths.
I mean, absolutely. I'm just saying. I find it really difficult to believe that there can be a pre-decided end for all of us and that we're just going through the motions. Like that doesn't make any sense. Like if that's the case, then like why do we get to choose
But
anything? Like I don't it's
but the thing is that that shouldn't make you feel bad or really matter to you, because as long as you don't know what that end fate is, which oftentimes you don't, unless you go to like a crystal ball lady and you believe in what she tells you. Like most people, I mean, like, this girl knew her end fate. Most people do
Mhm.
not. Um, if you don't, then let's say that fate is decided. Um, then you can live thinking you have free will and like happily believe that lie, and that's fine. Like, you know what I mean? It's like what you don't know can't kill you kind of thing. It's like
Right,
ignorance is
but what if you
bliss
do
kind of
know? What
thing.
if one day
Like,
I have a dream and then I just have to live with the fact that I know I'm going to die somehow and I can't prevent it?
well, you don't. I mean, you'll likely end up convincing yourself that it's just a dream. And then when it does happen, it'll happen so fast and you'll be dead so fast that, like, will you really have suffered that much? No. So, like, will you really have suffered that much from knowing that, like, predestination is a thing? No. Like, you won't. Um,
Okay, so your question was
yes.
who
Yes.
did it? Who's responsible? What's responsible? Again, I'm just going to say the source field, you know, the energy was hot that night.
I
It
guess
was
it just
telling
seems
her,
kind
you
of
know.
useless to me because she couldn't do anything about it.
Right. Well, that's the other thing. I don't
I mean,
why does it have to be from someone, you know? Why can't it just be her
It
seeing
could
it,
be,
you
but
know?
again,
Like
I'm telling you what my belief is, and that is that we just don't have that kind of vibration. So I don't know. I don't think we're capable of that kind of feat of just.
well, what about God then? What if it's
Yeah, I
God?
mean, it could be that. It could be that, or we could switch lanes. No pun intended. And say it was death because Final Destination, and it was some kind of just embodiment of death. And death is actually a force, and it turns out that it gives some people premonitions of their death, but it's kind of useless because you can't stop him. It kind of does it just to tease you. It
Or
could be
it's
that.
Satan?
Yeah, I mean, not really, because I mean, again, now I'm talking about movies, but in these movies, it never feels like satanic. It honestly, it doesn't even feel like
Malignant or
like
like
yeah, malignant or
malicious? Yeah.
malintentioned. Really, it just feels like, I don't know. It feels hard, like a fact. It just feels like that's the way it
Hmm.
is. Like in the movies, it feels like death is telling you what's going to happen, and then it just happens. But like it has no stake in it. It doesn't like derive pleasure
There's just a
from it.
balance that needs to
Um,
be balanced.
exactly. It's like a bill that needs to
Hmm.
be paid. That's what the movies feel like when those deaths happen. Um, yeah. So bringing that back into the real world, I guess it could be that. It could be something like. Honestly, I
Okay,
don't know. I don't know. You
so
go.
the next one I want to talk about is one I'm very skeptical of, and I have no reason. I just feel very skeptical of this one. And this is the case of
Okay.
clairvoyance investigated by William James. This happened in 1898. So in 1898, Miss Bertha Hughes of
Okay.
Enfield, New Hampshire, suddenly disappeared without a trace. More than 100 men searched the nearby woods and lake fruitlessly for 2 days. The next evening, a woman named Mrs. Titus, who lived in a neighboring village, alarmed her husband by making dreadful noises while she was dozing after supper. So when she woke up, she believed that she could find the body, and she asked him not to disturb her, and she went back to sleep. Okay, so that night, according to William James' report, Mr. Titus was roused by the screams of his wife. He got up, lit the lamp, and waited, obeying his wife's instructions. Um, she spoke. She followed the road down to the bridge, and on getting part way across it, stepped out onto that jutting beam, which was covered with white frost. She slipped on the log, fell backwards, and slid in underneath the timberwork of the bridge. You will find her lying, head in, and you will only be able to see one of her rubbers projecting from the timberwork. So I guess you can probably guess what happened. They went out and they found her, and she had slipped on a log, or at least it seemed there was a log there, and she was underneath the
I mean,
bridge, head
honestly,
in.
like these are just so hard to explain
Um,
away that I'm all in. Okay, clairvoyance is real, fine, but it just irks me that there's no reason for it. Like, what is the point if you can't do anything about it?
okay, well, she didn't predict this. She just saw where the woman was laying. So she was already dead at that point. So this is a little different. Like, she was actually, like, psychically connected to finding that location somehow. Maybe, I don't know. That's weird. But the reason I'm skeptical about this is because the woman was already dead and because they'd already been searching for 2 days. This is in 1898. I don't think I'm getting any trouble for saying I think Mrs. Titus fucking brutally murdered that woman, and that's how she knew where
I
she
mean,
was. Like, that's the easiest explanation. I bet she either saw her slip or she pushed her. Like, that's the easiest explanation. How else would you know
I
where to
mean,
find
if
the
we're getting
body?
real pragmatic, like Occam's razor over here, then yeah, like the dude fucking killed her. But like we're trying to stay scary, and I mean, I
I
guess
mean, I think
nothing's
that's
scarier than
scary.
murder, really.
Right. I mean, yeah, that one's a little bit harder for me to accept because of that. However, I do think it's an interesting study, and they did record it. And so I think if Mrs. Titus is innocent, I'm sorry, Mrs. Titus, I believe you. I think that it's an interesting example of ESP in like finding the body if it was she was innocent. Like that's interesting to me. Like who, I guess, gave her that ability in her dreams to find where the body was would be the question.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So now we're gonna flip gears a little bit, and we're gonna go straight into ESP. So this is not as flashy and not as scary whatsoever, but this is all scientifically researched in labs by parapsychologists, which are typically just psychologists who decided, like, hey, why aren't we investigating this? And so one of those people is Dr. Rhine. We
We
stand.
stand.
So Dr. Rhines were very talked about, very much covered in the New York Times. People were like crazy, like, no, this isn't real. What's happening? And he did something called a standard deck of ESP cards. So this is 25 cards, each bearing one of 5 symbols: a star, cross, circle, wave, or square. So probability theory insists that if the cards are randomly placed in 5 boxes, each labeled with one of the symbols, 5 hits can be expected just by chance. So 5 successful guesses of which card is in which. So a single run of guesses might produce 8 out of 25 correct. That's better than chance. And then if you think about probability, the next could be 2 out of 25. The next could be like 7 out of 25. So basically, like, it's just, you have to average it out just by guessing randomly. So if someone were to achieve an average score of 7 hits out of 25 over a total of 85,000 trials, the odds against such a record would require a whole paragraph of zeros. So that basically means it's really, really improbable to get 7 hits out of 25. And that's what happened. Over 85,000 tests, someone got 7 out of 25 almost consistently. And so he published this, and he published it in the Boston Society for Psychical Research in 1934.
One person did this.
Total many subjects. It was many subjects, I guess, but it was still like pretty accurate. So people really didn't want to believe it, and so other people started to test it. And so one person was Bernard Rice. He was so like he really didn't believe it. So Dr. Ryan thought that he was calling him a liar, and so the students were kind of amped up by this whole like conflict between them, and so they were like, well, why don't you like do your own study? And so Dr. Rice did. And so he's a skeptic, so he's doing this just to prove a point that the other guy was lying or changing the data somehow. And so he arranged a study in which one woman who claimed to be psychic would guess from her home the cards that Rice would be looking at in his home, a quarter mile away. So they were a quarter mile away, and they were only able to communicate later on. So there were people taking records of what she was guessing, and he was taking note of what he had. And so over a period of several months, the subject, the woman, performed 74 runs of the 25 cards. That's 1,850 trials. And she averaged 18 out of 25 accurate. And so it's possible that he was lying, right? Like that's what you would think, is that, well, maybe they lied. But he says when people asked him about that, if he was lying, he says, I had the deck of cards on my desk. I shuffled them each time, and at the stated time turned them over one by one, making a record of each card. I kept the records locked up in my desk, and sometimes it was a week before I totaled up the scores. And so I mean, it just depends on if you believe him. It depends on if you believe the
I mean, no,
woman.
I mean, but we're scary talk. Like, let's
Mhm.
like, let's say we do. Um,
I do. I genuinely believe this, and the reason is because the data is there. Like, 18 out of 25 is insane. Like, that's just crazy. And it wasn't a
I
random person this time. She was actually claiming to be psychic, which I think if she was, like, obviously she proved it. Like, shit.
I mean, it's no 25 out of 25,
That's true.
but it could be that, like, I don't know, it was a little bit far, so like the signal wasn't getting to her super well, like to her brain, so she confused the cross for the wave sometimes or something.
Well,
Um,
also,
no, that is crazy. I mean, 18 out of 25
yeah,
is
and
crazy.
also I want to say again when we're talking about ESP, like it doesn't have to be accurate, you know, like it's because it's not a parlor trick. It's just maybe there's something in us that knows, you know, like and maybe that something is the same as our sense of smell. Like I could smell a candle and smell vanilla while you smell it and you're like, I'm detecting like the raspberry notes more, you know?
Yeah, and I guess if you convince me of that, then I would have to switch my view on the whole, oh, how do you know when someone's looking at you thing? Because that would be part of ESP, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
it would be part of that, you know, like eye in the back of my head, I can see you.
Hmm.
Okay, so the last one I want to talk about is the how do you say this? Give me a second. The Maimonides? Okay. Okay.
Wait, you want to talk about my
I want to
undies?
talk
I'm
about your
confused.
underwear. Okay, I literally thought about this so hard and now I can't say it. Okay, I'm gonna say Maimonides. We're just gonna say Maimonides.
Okay, what is it?
Okay,
What is
so
it?
there was a dream laboratory created in Maimonides. This is a city. Okay, so the Maimonides Dream
Oh,
Laboratory. So I
in
think it's
what
the
country?
U.S. It doesn't say the specific
Oh,
place.
okay.
Okay. Oh no, it does. It's in Brooklyn. Yeah, it's in Brooklyn. And this was conducted
Okay.
by psychiatrist Montague Ullman and psychologist Stanley Krippner. So, at the specially created dream laboratory, a subject would sleep through the night with electrodes attached to his scalp, which will indicate on EEG equipment when he is dreaming. So, this is the study, right? So he's connected to the EEG equipment. So the sleeper is the receiver. So
Uh-huh.
he was told that after he fell asleep, the transmitter would be the person in another part of the hospital would try to send him a message which he might be able to pick up in his dream. Each time the dreamer had a dream, he would be awakened and asked to report his dream into a microphone. So typically people dream 4 to 5 times a night, so they had to wake him up a lot, and they could detect when he was dreaming by the EEG equipment. So they would wake him up repeatedly. He would tell them what he
Uh-huh.
saw in his dream or experienced. And so basically they're trying to see if the transmitter could get him to dream about what they were telling him or talking about in the next room in the hospital. So, the transmitter's job was to select by a complex randomization process one envelope from a group of 100 envelopes, each which contained a reproduction of a famous painting. They were then taken to an isolated room and they had to remain alone for the entire night with the picture. So, basically, the point was for them to just experience the painting. They're supposed to visualize it, meditate on it, think about it, just completely interact with it. So, they did 13 formal studies using this approach with different paintings, different transmitters, different receivers, and out of those, 9 were successful. So 9 out of 13. 9 out of 13. Yeah. And so this is kind of where the primary process distortion we were talking about earlier comes in. Um, they would, so like, there'd be like really famous paintings. Um, so they would describe them in their dream a little bit differently, but there would be like enough that it was accurate enough. Like, let me look at, let me explain that a little bit better.
Yeah.
Where is it?
Well, I mean, it's like what you were saying about you going to Walmart in the blue shirts and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but in the specific instance, there was one. Okay, there was the receiver said there was a house. There was no people involved and nothing was going on. It was just an isolated house, and this was a direct hit. This was 100% accurate for the painting by Cezanne, Trees and Houses. So that's accurate. But if it was a primary process distortion, and it was a painting of a dog in a hat, then the person would say, "I was walking my dog and I saw a man in a hat." Like that would be still successful. But yeah, so that's basically what happened. 9 out of 13 were accurate. So if that would be ESP
Hmm.
or telepathy, which is what I brought up earlier, where you
I
can
mean,
transmit thoughts from one person to another. If that is
or
true.
they just guess. Like something like a house is a very typical painting, I would think. I mean, what kind of other paintings were there? Like, was it people in houses mostly, or were there any abstract
That's
pieces?
true,
Or
but there were other paintings. I think they were just nice, like the really popular paintings, I guess. So I'm not sure. Like I imagine there was a variety because, like I said, there was 100 options to choose from. So
I mean, do you believe in this?
I I don't really like 100% believe in it, but I think I'm more prone to. So I'd say like 75% because it was recorded in an actual laboratory. You know,
Hmm.
like that they were under surveillance and stuff. Like that's not a joke. You know.
Yeah. I mean, maybe honestly, maybe you're presenting something
Mhm.
really good, but I just don't want to believe it. Kind of like how you said earlier that you didn't want to believe something because it was icky, like you didn't like how it made you feel. It's kind of the same way for me. It would be because okay, so you can transmit like a thought from a person to another, like like willingly transmit it and then have the other person like willingly accept it, but what about like involuntary thought transmit? Like basically meaning like if people read my mind, I don't like that if that's the case. Not quite, but just like if you're shit talking about a friend, like, or let's say you're shit talking about a friend in your head, like, is that thought like accidentally gonna get out of your brain and like end up in another person?
So like transmitting porn accidentally to someone else's brain. Okay, no, I don't think it works that way. I think it's more I think it's more
I
abstract than
guess.
that. And I think the reality is if you're thinking like, wow, that bitch fucking sucks right across from them, they can see that on your crotchety face. Like they know already. Like that's completely separate, I think. But
Which is why we don't do video on this podcast.
yeah, we don't want to see our crotchety faces. We have voices or sorry, we have faces made for radio. I think you're beautiful.
Honestly, video. Thank you, thank you. Okay, well, that was that was compelling. I just don't like it, but
That's like me and like I mean, I guess I don't like demons. I'm not like scared of demons. Like I feel like you're a little bit scared of telepathy for some reason.
um, I don't know. I just feel like it opens a huge door for I don't know
Yeah.
what, but just a door, and it's big, and there's something big behind it, and I don't know. I don't know.
Well, also you believe in aliens and you believe the Greys can communicate telepathy. Like
Yes, yes, but
that's a process of
that's
evolution.
I mean that's very different. Like
How?
I mean, you said it yourself. These are extraterrestrials, and
But what
like
if they're us from another dimension and they're just
yeah,
evolved?
but I told you that I didn't believe that in the last episode.
But
Everyone listen to the last
Andre,
episode,
this is
please.
not about what we believe. It's what we can discuss.
I mean, in that sense,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, yeah,
Okay.
you're right.
Thank you. So I want to end on something that was way too big for way too big for us to talk about in one episode. It's a quote from Professor H.J. Eisenek. He's a respected British psychologist, and it's just something to think about. So here we go. Oh, this isn't spooky, but it's kind of like I don't know. Unless there's a gigantic conspiracy involving some 30 university departments all over the world and several hundred highly respected scientists in various fields, many of them originally hostile to the claims of the psychical researchers, the only conclusion the unbiased observer can come to must be that there does exist a small number of people who obtain knowledge existing either in other people's minds or in the outer world by means as yet unknown to science. And that's not actually like a big can of worms or anything, but the big can of worms comes out of something else that's kind of talked about throughout these two books is it's unknown to science, and like you said, I want to know where it comes from.
Right.
So here's the big can of worms. What if there is like a fate or whatever, if everything is pre-decided, then essentially I'm going to make the argument that a lot of people have that time isn't real. Time is just the way we perceive things, because we already know that if you like
Okay.
go light years away and look at the Earth, you can still see the dinosaurs moving about. Like, this is like a real thing. So if time isn't real and the way we're perceiving it is the only
Right.
thing that is happening, then of course we can all be psychic, because our brain is just perceiving the present most of the time. Maybe sometimes it can perceive the future, because it doesn't matter. It's not real, you know? Like, time and space are just units of measurement. So that's the big stoner thought.
I'm gonna say, yeah. I mean, I'm gonna say, yeah. That's a big stoner thought, and just that, because it is like, I don't know, like outlandish claims require like outlandish amounts of proof. But honestly, like, I believe in stupid things, so I'm not gonna like just put that on you. And I can see where you're coming from, but
If time isn't real,
I
we
mean,
can
again,
see everything, man. Everything is around us all the time. Hit that bong right
you want to
now.
just pass? Yeah, you want to just pass me that?
I wish I could, Andre.
Oh, oh my god. Mom, don't listen to this. I don't smoke. It's a joke. Um, okay. Well, I'm jotting this down probably for a future episode where we can really open that can, because I would first want to do some research of my own if we're gonna do that. But I like that you brought it up now, so I can think about
All
it.
right,
So we can think
so
about it.
so I feel like I convinced you that clairvoyance is possible. Like, I feel like that's good. I feel proud of myself for that,
Yes.
actually.
I mean, yeah. Honestly, I'm kind of. I mean, I'm not like an extremely hard person to convince of something, especially if you present me with something that I deem to be good. But I'm not also super easy. So you did a good job, and I don't know. I felt compelled. So
Yeah, I mean, I eat that stuff up because I do find it a little bit scary, you know? I am
yeah,
scared of
yeah.
what humanity is capable of, and I love it.
Well, on that note, everyone. Once again, this is Andre.
This is Shannon.
And this has been Scary Talk. Remember that, again, we are on every podcast listening platform. You can find us on Google Play, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, etc., etc. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. I don't know, whatever the tweets, whatever the kids
Yeah.
do these days. Speaking of tweets, though, we are on Twitter again, at Talk Scary. Retweet us. You can also listen to our episodes there. You can also look at little sneak peeks of what next week's episode is going to be. We're always like previewing it days before it comes out.
New episodes every Monday.
New episodes every Monday, yes. We're trying to do it, and it's worked so far. We've been steady, so we're expecting another episode next Monday. But please do not be too hard on us if that does not happen. We have lives, Shannon and I. So
I mean, I don't have a life, but I'm glad that
so
you do. That gives me hope.
Okay. Well, thank you for listening, everyone. Good night, Shannon. Good night.
Good night. Have a wonderful dream tonight.
Yeah. Think about all this when you go to sleep. Toodaloo. Bye.